The Pope and Young Club wants to welcome you as we rally together to ensure our bow hunting opportunities for today and tomorrow. You've come to the podcast that believes in preserving, protecting, and promoting the passion for bow hunting. Join us as we strive to be the voice of today's bow hunter. This is the Pope and Young Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pope and Young Podcast. Jason Roundsville here, joined as always by my co-host Dylan Ray. And we have with us today, our guest is Chad Jones from Texas. Chad, welcome to the Pope and Young Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me on, fellas. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I speaking a little bit before and knowing just a little bit, one of the things I'm excited to talk about is that you have a legitimate 200-inch buck that you took with a bow down in Texas. And I know for Dylan and I and a lot of folks, if you look at Facebook and you look at all these places, there are a lot of 200-inch bucks that get shot, but not really. And so when somebody has one, I tell people there's a huge difference between a number and a score. A number is what your taxidermist or your buddy gives you, after stretching the tape on the tailgate. A score is what you have when you go through the process. You get it officially measured, you get it officially entered, verified, and registered in the book. And at that time, you have an official score. And I believe yours official score is 233 7/8.
That's correct.
So that's a pretty good buck. What's your second biggest?
Well, my second biggest is a 172. And then last year I shot 151-inch 8-point.
Okay.
And so that's my so that's kind of my pecking order. Man, I had another 200-incher on camera this year that I was chasing and just could not get on him. A lot of hunting pressure. It just didn't work out. Spent a lot of time in the stand trying to make the right moves, but he's old and savvy, but be interested to see what he looks like next year.
Yeah, they don't get big by being stupid.
No, they don't.
Dylan and I call all the stupid ones out at the fork and horn level. So,
yeah, I can relate.
He's your own guy.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us about the hunt where you got that big one. I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah. So, so I'm hunting in Collin County. It's a county that's in kind of, I would say, really north central Texas. We're about an hour just south of the Red River into Oklahoma. And so I actually had some friends that was hunting this property for years before I had gotten on it. And some new development came in and bought the land. And so just had ties with some people that knew some people, and they were like, "Hey man, this lease is coming up. You interested in getting on it?" And I knew exactly where it was, and I'd seen pictures of the deer. I was like, "Yeah, I'm in." And so there were 4 of us total that went in together on this property. And November 1st was actually the start of our lease time frame instead of October 1st, like it's normally for bow season for us. But it was just the way the sale of the land transition stuff went. That was the timing. So I was a little late to the game of trying to get out there, right when the rut is really starting for us. And anyway, so went out, put out some cameras, and the night that I found a really large diameter rub on one of the trees, about a 10-inch diameter rub. And I was like, man, this thing's going to be a giant out here. And so I put a cell camera on that tree, overlooking that tree. And later that night, it was at like 10 o'clock that night, a picture of this just mega wide buck with a massive drop time shows up, just standing there looking. He was going back to the rub, I guess, just scent checking it. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And, and I knew there were some big deer there, but I mean, this thing was a whole nother level,
It's
and so,
special.
oh yeah. Yeah. And so, so then it turned into, okay, well, now I need to figure out, is he on our property? Is he coming from somewhere else? Is he bedding somewhere else? Just trying to, basically, I'm trying to come up with a game plan at like an accelerated rate, because knowing, that with the rut coming, he might be 7 miles down the creek, hit by a car or shot by somebody, so it's like, man, I've got to figure this out extremely quickly, and so I went back down a couple days later, put out some more cell cameras kind of on different areas. Once all the guys had kind of identified where they were wanting to hunt at and everything, um, you know, basically got on a hunt stand app, went through, some of the topography and the thick areas, and kind of, trying to think of where he might be staying and coming from. And then essentially just let the cameras do the work. Then, I was getting a lot of pictures of him, but it was only at night. And, I was just kind of monitoring the way he's coming in, where he's going out, which cameras he's showing up, the time in between those cameras, and just got hundreds of pictures of him, but no daylight pictures.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, this isn't going to do me a whole lot of good, but I was optimistic that the ladies were going to get him on his feet at some point. And then on, it was, I guess, November 13th was the first daylight picture. And then I was like, it's game time. I was pretty confident he was staying on our property, just because of, the times I was seeing him right after dark. It might be 15 minutes after dark. So I'm like, okay, he's bedding somewhere close by that, I'm catching him, because I knew he wasn't traveling a long distance in the daylight and just getting to ours right after dark, and so, so then it just boiled down to, all right, well, here's these stand locations. This is where I'm seeing him frequenting. This is where I think he's coming from. So I kind of isolated where I thought his core bedding area probably was. And then basically just, looked at the wind direction for those days, put in my vacation. I essentially took all my vacation. My wife thought I had lost my mind, but I was like, you understand, I'm going to kill this deer. I was like, I'm going to kill this deer. And I was like, whatever it takes. And so I told my boss, I showed him a picture, and he was cool with it. He's like, dude, I don't blame you, and so took all my vacation time and pretty much hunted just about every single day, as long as the wind direction was right for me. And I mean, just ungodly amount of hours. And so anyway, never saw him in person until November 17th. And I was at, one of the other guys was hunting there too. And he was actually hunting on the south end, and it was kind of the southeast wind. And so where I was predominantly getting a picture of the buck was on my south stand, my south location. And I was like, well, this isn't going to do a lot of good, because if this is his bedding area and his wind's blowing into his bedding area, he's not ever coming out and getting to me at this point. So I kind of just used a little reverse psychology on the situation, thought, all right, well, if he smells in his bedding area on this end, I'll go to the north end on the opposite side, and it maybe push him out. And sure enough, I'm sitting there, and I see something. I see legs kind of coming down this trail, and I had found another scrape and rub on one of these trees that I set up on, and I see these legs coming through the woods. And then finally, kind of looking down, and I see the antlers, and there was no mistaking him at this point. And I was just like, oh, dude, this is about to happen. And the scrape and the rub was exactly 20 yards from my stand. So I'm getting everything knocked, getting in position. I'm like, this is going to happen. I'm going to kill this deer for whatever reason. And wind's to my face. And he just gets off of the trail, and he kind of walks around the edge, and he comes to this little clear cut, and he's about 45 yards. And I'm just sitting there thinking, please come over here. And so he gets out right to the edge of the opening, and he's not quite where I would have a shot, but I didn't really want to try to shoot that far to begin with. Especially since he was alert. And so I was just like, oh man, come on. So finally he turns his head, and I mean, I'm just like, this thing is insane. Of course, then I'm having trouble holding it together at this point. I'm like, oh my God. And he's just kind of scanning around looking for does. I was kind of backed up to a doe bedding area. And anyway, so he was just coming in there looking around and scent checking for does. And he stops and he kind of looks around down this little draw, turns, goes back the way he came. I guess went back to his bed, and I was like, oh my gosh. And of course, I'm rattled at this point and going, all right, well, now do I keep hunting this spot, or do I go back to where I've been getting all the other pictures of them? And so it was kind of a little bit of a game of cat and mouse, trying to figure out what the other hunters were doing and where they were sitting, and trying to figure out where that was going to position me. And so anyway, so put in a bunch more hours, never saw him. And then Thanksgiving morning, we were actually hosting Thanksgiving at my house. A bunch of family were coming in, and I told my wife, I was like, hey, I was getting some daylight pictures of him on camera at this point. Of course, it was opposite cameras of where I was sitting, and I was like, yeah, he's driving me nuts. And anyway, so I told
you just thought, hey, I'm going to score a few brownie points on Thanksgiving Day by leaving to go hunting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, all
right, exactly. Well, my wife kind of understands. She married into that. You know what I'm saying? Like she kind of knew I was ate up with hunting, but it got to an extreme with a deer like that. And so anyway, I get up super early.
So by that, I got to ask you. So by this time, are you thinking, man, 45 yards is looking pretty good right now?
I questioned it. I questioned it a lot in my mind. When I went back and replayed it, but then it was kind of like, I couldn't really dwell on the past, because I'm like, if he wouldn't have been alert, if he would have just kind of been, eating or paying attention to something else, where I wouldn't have really thought he would have jumped the string or jumped the arrow or whatever, then it might have been a little different. But I mean, you could have heard a pin drop out there, and he was watching, he was so focused that I'm like, man, I can't, I don't think I can risk. Yeah, I just can't risk that, and which was tough. It was really tough, because I didn't know if I would ever see him again, especially after already putting in that many hours to get the opportunity. You don't get many at a deer like that. And so it's almost like you got to take the opportunity when you get it, because you may never get it again. Yeah. And so,
and the guys you were hunting with, were you keeping them updated on all this? Were you hunting together, or were you?
Not really. So
okay,
that's always a question I get, is everybody says, well, because I was the first one to get the picture up, and everyone's like, well, did you just keep it to yourself? And I was like, it crossed my mind. I was like, but it was my lease mates, and I was like, they're going to see the deer at some point on their cameras, so I showed it to them. And of course, then everybody was like, oh dude, I'm hunting every day, and so it added a whole lot of additional pressure that I had to try to figure out, not only how to get next to this buck's core area without him knowing I'm there, I'm also trying to do this while I've got other hunting pressure and scent from those hunters in there too. So it was kind of complicating the puzzle piece there a little bit. But like I say, I was just kind of using their stand locations to my favor, in the wind direction to my favor. I was basically just one of the opposite ends of where they were hunting, knowing that the buck was going to smell them long before he ever got to them. But yeah, so anyway, so I get up Thanksgiving morning. I get up super early, because a few days previous, I've been getting some daylight pictures at 2:30, 3:30 in the afternoon. He's just out cruising looking for does, and anyway, so I get up really early, and the wind direction for where I was getting in just about every day wasn't good. But I'm like, this is my best location to try to kill him. And anyway, and so I have what's called a ghost blind. I don't know if y'all have seen them. They're like mirrored panels that fall out, like reflect off the ground. So my stand was actually a bad wind direction, for this location that I was going to sit. It's kind of a funnel and pinch point. It's where his original, the big rub was that I first had the picture of him. There was a big acorn tree there, and that was like his spot. He had rubs all over the place, scrapes all over the place. And so I was like, this is where I really need to go to get a chance at him. And, but the wind direction wasn't right. So I ended up taking my ghost blind and I set up on the opposite end. So the wind was in my favor, and there was a creek that I set up, behind me. So I knew that, deer wouldn't come in from behind me and blow me out. And so anyway, I set up right there, and it's kind of this pinch point where this little finger of trees all comes together, that it was his part of his travel corridor. And one other lease mate, he was hunting that day too, but he was probably 3/4 mile from me. And anyway, and so I told my wife, I said, hey, I won't be late for Thanksgiving lunch. Everybody's coming over at like 11 o'clock. And I said, I'll hunt till like 9 and then come home. And she's like, all right, just stop and get some sweet tea on the way home, well, whatever. And so anyway, I guess it's about 8:30. A buddy texts me, or that was hunting out there, and says, hey, I just saw the drop time buck chasing hard on a doe, and he was headed south, which is where I was sitting. But I'm going, he's chasing the doe. He's 3/4 mile away from me. There's a ton of woods in between. I was like, the chances of him coming by me is pretty much slim to none. And so about 10 minutes goes by, and I hear crashing coming from the north. And I mean, I'm to the point now that I'm getting close to going home, packing up to head home. And I hear crashing, running through the woods, and I can't see what it is at this point. But I hear limbs breaking and leaves, thrashing all around. And so finally I look over, and this doe comes just blazing out of the trees. And she kind of loops around and turns and starts running right at me. And mind you, I'm sitting behind a mirrored panel, which I don't know if you've ever seen them like in person when they're blended in good, like you physically cannot tell that they're there. And she's running, flying right at me. And I'm going, she's about to run right over the top of me, because I just look like branches to her. She can't tell that there's a blind there. And so I turn and get turned into position, thinking this is not going to be good. And she literally stops 8 yards from me, and I'm frozen. Like, I'm talking so close that I can't move. And she turns and she's looking back, and tongue's hanging out. She's panting. And of course, my adrenaline's going through the roof right now. I'm like, dude, that's about probably the second closest I've ever been to a deer, but especially when I'm thinking it's about to run into me. Anyway, so she turns, she looks back, she's panting really hard, and I can still hear her crashing, running through the woods, but she's so close that I can't look and see what's coming, So I'm like trying to look as hard as I can out of the corner of my eye. And luckily she turns and kind of loops around a little bit. And when she starts going away from me, I look over and I see this mega wide rack with a drop time hanging down. And I'm like, oh my God. But he's running just like she was running. Not as fast as her. He was in a pretty heavy trot, but he's coming straight at me. Literally like burning a hole through me. And I was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to draw back. He's looking right at me. And so luckily that doe, when she kind of looped around, he changed his angle to cut her off. And I think that's the only thing that saved me, because when he turned and started cutting off, to catch up on her lead, he took his eyesight off of my direction, and I was able to get everything pulled back. I had already ranged all the trees to where I was. So there was a couple limbs hanging down that I didn't have a clear shot right at the 30-yard mark, which is what I wanted. And so the next little lane was right at 40 yards, which was still a little longer than I wanted to take a shot. And I was like, all right, it happened to me once. I've got to send it. It's like, it was a ton of hours. And I'm like, I have to try to make this happen. Anyway, so I draw back, and it's the typical meh, 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 and I'm progressively getting louder, and he ain't stopping. I mean, he's got his, lip curled up, head down, and he's just cruising. And so I was like, dude, I'm just going to put it on a lead up on his front shoulder and let it go. And sure enough, it kind of brings back a little bit of dove hunting ritual, and so I just let him a little bit. I released it, and I see the luminot go right in behind the ribs, full pass through, and I'm just he bolts and he runs off, and I see I see my knock shining on the ground, and now like I'm just like overwhelmed with emotion of going, okay, well, I know the shot was good. I knew for sure it at least hit liver, like because of the angle, it went from the backside of the ribs up through the far side shoulder. And I was just like, did that really just happen? Of course, then I'm like shaking, going, oh my God, please let this be a vital shot, and because that's always the thing that sinks. Then you're kind of going, man, I mean, I've seen some deer get shot where you're like, there's no way these things aren't dead and they live, and so of course it's running through my mind. Well, do I get up and look? Do I sit here and wait because I don't want to bump him? If because I just see him kind of go through the brush and then disappears. Never saw him fall. And so I give it about 15 minutes, and I'm sitting there waiting. I text my wife and said, hey, I'm going to be late. And
more
anyway,
brownie points.
Yeah, exactly. And anyway, and so I get up. I was like, I'm gonna at least sneak over here and check my arrow, check the blood and everything. So I go over there and look, and it's just coated in blood. It had some darker blood, but I could see some bubbles. So I knew, I was pretty much confident it hit the liver and then the far side lung. And anyway, and so blood is just poured out like you poured a paint can. And so I was like, all right, man, I'm just going to go out where I last saw him. And it kind of went to this like open field on this strip of trees. And I was like, I'm just going to slip out there real quiet and at least see if I see any sign. If not, I'm going to back out just because I didn't want to take any chances. And so as soon as I round the corner, I see horns sticking up out of this grass. And I was just like, oh my God. And I walk up to him, and, seeing pictures of him just did not do it justice. I mean, to walk up and to physically see a deer that you've basically been infatuated with hunting, to finally get it. And, of course, I text my buddy that was hunting, and I sent a picture to him. He's like, no freaking way, and it's kind of one of those deals where it's like, you hunt your whole life dreaming of a mega giant to step out, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a surreal moment, because it's you always have high hopes for it, but it's like I tell everybody, they're like, man, how do I kill, a big deer? How do I kill 200-inch deer? It's like, well, you have to have big deer to kill
Yes.
big, I mean, it's like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, yes, nutrition and things can help, but it's like, you've got to have the genetics, to have big deer, and then letting them get to that age structure. But, so it's kind of one of those things. I've hunted all over, and it's always, you have that pipe dream of thinking, man, I hope a 200-incher walks out. But the biggest I see is like a 130, and that's kind of the genetic pool there. I'm really in high hopes for no reason, but it's man, it was just, I mean, it was overwhelming, for it to all come to an end, and have the story unfold the way it did. And kind of the more I thought about it, I was like, I was literally yards away from that being just a story of my second experience of going, yeah, I saw him on the hoof and he ran right by me. If that doe would have changed direction, if she would have physically saw me and blew and ran somewhere else and changed his direction by, yards, he could have ran anywhere in that 3/4 of a mile. I'm just going, man, I mean, a lot of it is just a ton of luck. I mean, as hunters, obviously we prepare as much as we can, with, shooting and stand placement and hunting the wind and doing all the right things, but a lot of it's just a lot of luck. And he could have easily went a different direction, and I'd have never seen him or just watched him walk by. Now, I have seen some mega giants that, I question why I bow hunt, because I have a bow in my hand and they're at 80 yards and all I can do is watch them. And I was like, man, this is terrible, but man, it was, I mean, it's what dreams were made of, man. It was, you know,
Now, Texas is not, when you think of, monster whitetails, Texas is not the state that would be at the top of the list typically, but you guys sounds like you're getting some good bucks down there.
It's funny you say that, because everyone always thinks, and everyone assumed it was high fence, because most of the ranches in Texas, and primarily South Texas, are high fence ranches, and so, but the county I hunt in, which is Collin County, just opened a deer season in 2012. And, we still have, quite a bit of ag land. And, we have lakes here that have private corps land, like Corps of Engineers land, that's not huntable. I mean, you can duck hunt and pig hunt, but it doesn't have a draw or anything for deer. And so it's gone for decades with no hunting. And, and so it still doesn't have large numbers of deer, but the difference is it's got really good genetics, and the deer get to the age structure to start producing. Because every year since they've opened a season, there has been a 200-incher killed, with the exception, I think, 1 year. And a friend of mine, a good buddy of mine, he's actually killed 200-inchers back to back in 2014 and 2015, 2016. And, so it's got some mega giants. In the Grayson County, which is just the county next to us, there's normally, if it's not a 200-incher, it's real close, is killed up there every year. And we are 2 of 4 counties that are still bow only counties in all of Texas. And we just had a petition go through. There's actually a high fence owner that he's trying to push to Texas Parks and Wildlife to make it open to gun season. Because obviously he wants to book gun hunts, because people don't want to pay a bunch of money to come to a high fence place to use their bow, because if you draw blood, you're paying for it. So I understand the aspect of why he's doing it, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's we won't have what the caliber of deer that we have. I mean, they'll be shot out in 3 years if they open a gun season, just because, we're getting a lot of development here, a lot of, it's really kind of becoming urban hunting for the most part. And so,
I don't know. We have a test for that. How many yards were you from the nearest swimming pool?
Well, so the spot that I was actually hunting in is still a rural area, still a lot of ag land and things like that. And so, but I can tell you, one of my other leases in Collin County, which there was another buddy of mine shot a 213 on it last year, different spots, about 20 minutes apart. That there's a swimming pool about 200 yards from me on that one.
Yeah.
And so, so it's kind of one of those deals. We want to keep it, everybody's getting this conversation. Well, y'all don't want it just because this is gun versus bow. You're bow hunting elitist. You think that I was like, man, it's not about that. I grew up gun hunting. That's, I'm not opposed to gun hunting. My daughter, shot her first deer with a gun at 10 years old, and it's like, I don't make it about whether it's bow or gun. If you're hunting, it's all about hunting to me. But what I do have the issue with is kind of the I don't know, like what the right way to say it would be, but in terms of your judgment, is I'm going, well, it's a little different on making a call to shoot a deer if you're within 30 yards versus you're looking at one at 300 yards that you can shoot with your rifle. You might not be shooting a deer that's the age structure that it needs to be, or you might not quite notice, because Texas has a 13-inch rule. It's got to have a 13-inch inside spread or greater, or it's not legal. And I think the problem is you start getting people in there with rifles, and the age structure of the deer is going to suffer, and along with caliber of deer, and you're going to have a lot of people that aren't doing things the right way. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of poachers as it is now. There's a lot of people that don't get permission to hunt on certain properties or whatever where there's big deer, and so they just go onto these core properties and poach deer. And there's mega giants out there, but it's kind of like, well, what good does that do you to go shoot one you can't show anybody? But yeah, it was kind of a funny deal, because kind of after all that whole deal unfolded, and I'm thinking, it come out in some publications. It was in North American Whitetail. It was in Peterson's magazine, Texas Trophy Hunters magazine, some other publications, and so it kind of started opening some doors with killing that buck. And I was like, man, this is awesome. And so when I had talked about originally had talked to North American Whitetail, they were like, hey, this one right now for 2018, they said this one might make the cover of the magazine. I was like, oh man, that'd be freaking awesome. Well, guess what? Guess who else shot a deer in 2013 or 2018? Luke Brewster. Y'all may have heard of him. With the world record. So kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but it was all good. I was like, that's why, because everybody's, man, there's no way that's a free range deer, that you shot. And I was like, dude, there's a guy that just shot a deer that's 100 inches bigger than mine. I was like, I don't understand what you don't understand about it, but
right.
But yeah, it was awesome, man. Everybody's like, man, you just need to hang it up now. It's over, and for me, it's not, I mean, do I think I'll ever shoot a 200 incher again? I have seen some 200 inchers. Like I say, I was after one last year. I was guessing he'd probably be between probably 200, 210, somewhere around there. But it's kind of, to me, I'd rather shoot a mature deer that's got some cool character, or, somebody, one of them that's on a downhill slope, than to shoot one just to shoot one. You know what I mean? Because there's some deer here. I mean, we'll see some, 150 inch, 2.5-year-olds, I mean, it's, and that's where it gets tough, is, when you're seeing some really big deer, you see a 3.5-year-old, 170 inch deer, that's really hard to pass. But the difference is, if you know the genetics and the potential for them, you're kind of going, this could be the next 200 incher if you would learn to age them and realize. But it's hard because, I mean, we've gotten so much notoriety because of so many big bucks getting shot here, that now it's getting an influx of hunters. And a lot of them are just shooting everything, and I get it. I mean, if you're paying a lot of money for a lease, you're kind of going, well, I'm not going home empty handed, I'm going to at least shoot something. And so, I mean, I get a little bit of both of that, but it's, but I'm
not a whitetail guy, but I'm curious to know, Jason, how you can hear a story like that and not be like, yeah, whitetails is awesome. Whitetail hunting's cool.
How do I think that or not think that?
How do you not think that when you hear that story?
Oh, I like it. It's a good story. I do think whitetail hunting's cool. Heck, I did it this year in Wisconsin.
So what's your gig? Are you a muley guy, or are you an elk guy?
I like chasing elk. I like chasing mule deer, and blacktails. I grew up with blacktails, so they're kind of special.
Yeah, that's cool.
There's places where I've gone, and I didn't get any big bucks this year on camera, but last year I had a really, really good mature buck, and I never caught him a single time on daylight. And I was moving cameras around. I talked to Jim Willems. I said, hey, I've got this buck. He's completely nocturnal. I said, what do I do? And he said, try moving your cameras on different trails. And man, I tried everything and never got a picture of him. Those blacktails, they just literally just go nocturnal. So it's a little bit different. No, I like it. I'm looking forward to getting back after whitetails again this year. And
Sounds like you need to go to Texas, Jason.
I'll tell you what, man, if they're passing up 170s, I definitely need to go to Texas.
Well,
Yeah,
let me put it this way. Not everybody's passing those deer. I'm seeing, I mean, unfortunately, I've seen some walking around with arrows sticking out of them, crossbow bolts sticking out of them that are barely even legal to shoot. And I'm just, it's kind of heartbreaking, because I'm like, guys, I mean, what are you doing? I mean, I get it. I understand the meat hunting, but I look at it this way. Hey, if you're a meat hunter, then shoot a doe. You know what I mean? Don't shoot a little 2-year-old buck that has a ton of potential just because you want to shoot it, and I don't know. What's up?
I said, we can't go hunt with him, Jason.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure I can hunt in Texas if they have a 13-inch rule.
Yeah, he's in the 200-inch club. Me and you are still in the Forky club.
Yeah. But we dominate the Fork and Horn Club, man.
Yes, we do.
Yes, absolutely.
We got our fair share of those too. That seems to be the only sheds I've ever found for some reason.
Yeah.
Just all the spikes.
See, that's why, they're harder to find than those big ones because the big ones stick out. And,
yeah, that's right.
Dylan and I, that's why, we kind of like the challenge of the smaller bucks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a smaller target. It's just a.
I completely relate. It was like shed hunting. I mean, you're not a real shed hunter unless you're finding the spikes, the little nubbin bucks,
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, you're right. The big ones you can pretty much just trip over. So
yeah,
I get it. I completely can understand that.
Yeah. So
like, you shot an elk at 30 yards. That's cool. But I shot a 100-pound deer at 40 yards. Who's the best?
Yeah.
Yeah. Much bigger target. I mean, how impressive.
So, so that's the story that we're going to stick with, at least for a while.
I dig it.
Yeah. So what else are you chasing? Are you just whitetails? Is that your focus, or you chase a little bit of everything?
Man, I like to do it all. Something I've never shot is a mule deer. And so that's on my list to do. I've been bear hunting. My uncle actually has a place in Mena, Arkansas, and he's got a ton of black bears up there. And for some reason, I don't know if they just hibernate like when I go or what the deal is, but they come in. They do those bait barrels and stuff, and they're there at his cabins all the time until I go, and then I don't know. I'm kind of jinxed on that deal, so I'm gonna keep sticking with it though. So I still want to get a bear, but yeah, I do primarily, whitetail hunt. I do a lot of pig hunting, coyote hunting, just trying to cut down on the population between the pigs and the coyotes here. Love turkey hunting, dove hunting, duck hunting, elk hunting. I was supposed to try to get up in September with a buddy of mine in Colorado. I just couldn't shake loose to get things done, but I'd like to get up there and take that adventure, man. That's
they're big.
Well, and I always hear everyone say this. Of course, I can't testify, but everyone always says, if you ever chase screaming bulls, you'll never want to whitetail hunt again. And I've had multiple buddies tell me that were big whitetail bow hunters, and then they started elk hunting and got one, and it was over for them. And I was like, man, I mean, I can understand, but I was born on whitetail hunting. I mean, it was.
It's just a complete different kind of hunt. I mean, with elk, you don't get that year-long chess match of learning a deer and patterning a deer and studying a deer, and you're never going to have, like, you talk to these Western guys and they're like, wait a minute, you've seen the same deer for 6 years, and I'm like, yeah, I watched it, as a fawn and kept up with it. You're never going to have that with elk hunting. So it's just a different kind of hunt. I mean, completely different kind of hunt. The week of hunting will always beat the week of deer hunting, but You don't get the year-long chess match of learning deer, and it's just different.
Yeah, see, I mean, I think that's kind of the thing for me is the history that you build with whitetail hunting, because it's, you identify that buck and, kind of their summer range versus their fall range. And, it's like that chess match where you're trying to outsmart this deer, once they get to an age structure to where they're getting smarter and harder to get on, that's the challenge I like is I want to find the oldest, most mature deer there. And I want to try to outsmart him in his house. It's, I don't know, it's kind of a weird deal, but it's, and then it's, if you don't catch up with that deer, then it's all right. Well, now I want to find the sheds, and you find one side or both sides, whatever. And then it starts building a story, and it's cool if you can go, hey man, I've got the last 3 years sheds of this guy, it's, I don't know, it builds a lot more history where I think it almost makes it more personal, with a particular deer, like a target buck, more than it would, another species. But I still want to get up and do some mule deer and elk hunting though, like, backcountry type stuff, like the rugged terrain. And I actually went to Park City, Utah for Total Archery Challenge. It was my first time to Utah last summer, and I was like, dude, that's got to be awesome. Now the pack out would probably really suck if you didn't have horses, but I was like, man, I could see it. It's pretty amazing.
Everybody wants to be a backcountry hunter until you get an elk down 6 miles from the truck.
Yeah.
And you look up and you're like, okay, the nearest road is up there.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long day.
Oh, I can imagine.
It didn't take me to the pack out. It took me about 7 minutes up the trailhead, and I'm like, dude, I'm done with this crap.
Yeah.
Well,
now
I quit.
They say give yourself 3 to 4 days to acclimate to the different elevation.
Yeah.
We did it. I did it really stupid. My first out west hunt, we drove overnight. We drove 26 hours over, got to Idaho, and met the guy we were hunting with. And so we had been up for 26 hours straight on this drive, and we get out of the truck, and dude's like, you ready to pack in? And I'm like, why not? Let's roll, man. I'm like, not even thinking anything about it. And like I said, we've been up for 26 hours. I go from, 1,200 feet of elevation to now getting out of the truck at 6. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty at all.
I don't imagine. Yeah, it's I like I say, I want to do it, but yeah, it was eye-opening to me because, like I say, I've been to Colorado and other places, but kind of the getting acclimated to it. When I went to Total Archery Challenge, same deal. Flying from Texas, to Utah and get out, and we're like, hey, let's go up and shoot, and man, this Flatlander was not used to that. I was just like, I was huffing and puffing, and some of the local guys were giving me crap, man. They were just like, what's wrong, dude? I was like, it's like my muscles are wanting to go, but my lungs don't want to help them. It was just like, it was like breathing through a straw, man. I was like, I could not get oxygen. But after a couple of days, I got acclimated and I was fine. But that first couple of days was rough.
We were at a Mountain Archery Fest in Utah, and they were all laughing at me. And I think it was at 9,500, Jason.
It was up there.
Yeah, and we get up there, and I just walk up a flight of stairs, and I'm like,
yeah.
Like, breathing, they're like making fun of me, and I'm like, dude, I live at 900 feet of elevation. Like, this is, I couldn't sleep at night. Like,
no, I couldn't either. That was, I've been some pretty decent elevation, but I'll tell you what, that trip was the only time it's really hit me like that, where I couldn't sleep. Like, you literally had to breathe. You had to focus to breathe. You're like, and that was a little bit different. I think some people don't recognize or don't realize exactly what that elevation can do to you. It can take it out of you.
Well, and that was my first thought is all I'm doing is carrying a backpack and a bow. I'm sitting there thinking, there's no way I could pack 100 pounds on my back and try to walk out here like that. I mean, it was, I was having to stop, and, it kind of freaked me out for a minute because I'm going, am I even going to be able to get oxygen at this point? it was, but yeah, once I kind of got acclimated to it wasn't too bad. But man, yeah, it was kind of scary at first. I was not expecting that. I was like, man, this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It can hit you. So, all right. So elk's on the list and mule deer. You have plans? What's your timeline? Are you putting
Man,
in this year?
well, I don't know. So I got a buddy, Dan Staten, runs Elk Shape. Um, I'm maybe going to one of his camps that he's got here in Texas coming up here in the next month. And that's kind of what it is the conditioning and everything that is going to come with that. And maybe kind of try to prepare myself to just, make the leap and go out and get over the counter and see, see what we can make happen. But, more for just the experience, because I know a lot of people that they go, they spend a week out there and they come home empty handed. And it's like, I don't like to not be successful, especially if you're taking, weeks of vacation or taking a bunch of time off, long trip up there. So it's like, I really want to make sure I do my homework. I'm going to a good location that's, got a good number, gives me a higher probability of getting one. I don't really want to just go hike around the mountains just to hike around the mountains and go, yeah, I didn't even see elk. They're not here, And so, so part of that's just doing a little bit of homework for me. But the mule deer, so I had Kendall Jones offered to take me up to Mexico and do a mule deer hunt. And I just couldn't make the timeline work to go up there, but that's on my bucket list because the place she goes has some mega giants, and so I'm gonna try to get that pinned down before long. But and then probably Nilgai down in South Texas. I've hunted King Ranch a couple times, and they've got some free range Nilgai out there, which I've seen some, but just not close enough to shoot. I mean, that's another one because I've heard that meat is amazing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of another one on my list.
Yeah, I haven't hunted a lot, at least big game that I haven't enjoyed eating.
Yeah,
it's all been pretty good so far. So, and I was down in Mexico a couple weeks ago, and man, the chef down there was making duck edible. I'm like, what are we eating tonight? And he's like, oh, that's duck. I'm like, really? Because I like the duck hunt, but I am not a big fan of eating.
Yeah, that takes talent if you can make duck taste really good.
Man, it was good. I went back for seconds more than once. So,
but Axis is another big one. Dylan, I kind of touched on that a little bit, but man, Axis is cool. It's I've shot my first Axis in full velvet, or first any animal in full velvet this last year, and so I may try to peel off sometime this summer when they're hitting the rut and go chase those around because they're really fun to hunt too.
Yeah, it's neat. Texas has a lot of different opportunities like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the odd ads and
javelinas. Shot my first javelina at the King Ranch, which they stink like nobody's doing. So it's not. I didn't want to eat it, kind of deal, because it smells so bad. But I had it mounted. I mean, just a cool animal, kind of nostalgic animal. And so, but the Axis, man. I mean, there's places here they're just covered up. I mean, and people are like, "Oh yeah, they eat all my plants," and I was like, "Hey, if you got a problem with them, you just let me know. I know a guy."
I can fix that for you.
Yeah,
you have a problem, and I'm a problem solver.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and I won't even wake you up by shooting a gun.
Yeah, and I know there's been reports of way down South Texas, around like Chaparral and all that. They've got warthogs now.
Really?
I know some had been seen around like San Antonio, running next to the highway. Now we're assuming they probably got out of a high fence ranch somewhere.
Right.
I mean, we can only assume, right? But
Yeah, it's a long swim for them otherwise.
Yeah, I would say. And so, but the thing is, those things freaking breed like rabbits, and so it doesn't take long for them to take over. And so that's been my bucket list, because I was actually supposed to go to Africa with Kendall the year before last. And then that was when all the COVID stuff hit, and Africa wasn't letting anybody go over there, and we just didn't get it rescheduled. But yeah, that's my bucket list for sure.
Yeah, it's something else, man. It's definitely worth seeing.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one question we ask everybody on the show is, Chad, when you're out, whether you're in a tree for whitetails or whether you're climbing up the mountain next time you go for elk, what is one piece of kind of a non-traditional type item that you have with you when you go hunting?
Non-traditional, I was gonna say, because I don't leave home without a knife. I mean, that's a given, but I mean, I don't know if that's traditional or not. It's kind of funny because it used to always be a tradition, like people always carried a knife or a pocket knife, but now I see it more and more. My wife always says, "Oh, have Chad get it." He always carries a knife, and then most people don't carry one. So I'd say that's probably my traditional / non-traditional, that I just do not leave home without a knife on me.
Dylan, I don't think we can accept knife.
No.
Okay. All right. Well,
that's definitely, if you're hunting, you should have a knife. If you're going to Walmart, maybe not, but if you're going up on the mountain, you should have a knife.
Yeah, you would be shocked.
Yeah.
I've actually been around people that have shot an animal and don't have a knife to gut it. And I was like,
really?
Okay. Yes. I'm not going to name any names, but
was that in Texas?
Yeah.
That was in Texas.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, they were new to hunting, so I couldn't really blame them, but I'm like, so what did you think you were going to do with this animal when you were?
Hey, you just chew a hole through it.
Yeah.
Man. Huh.
So, but, well, then I'll say probably what I always take, and I primarily bow hunt, but what I take, that's probably not traditional to people, because I'm, especially bow hunting, I'm like super cautious about the wind, because it doesn't matter. I'm partnered with Scent Crusher and all these, and I mean, they're all great to a certain degree, but you're not going to beat a deer's nose 100%. So wind direction is, and knowing the wind and what it's doing is critical. And so for me, you got the powders, the silica powders and all that stuff. What I actually use is goose down feathers. And I don't ever see anybody else carry them, but I have I actually bought bought them in bulk, and they're a little small, not big feathers. They're just little small, the down, it's like inside jackets. So they're extremely light but visible, because the powders you use, well, you can see the powder come out and you can see which way it's going, but what it doesn't tell you is if the wind's swirling, because you can do a test next to them, as you can spray the powder and you can watch it dissipate after about 5 feet from you, 6 feet from you. But the feather, you can actually watch it for 20, 30, 40, 50 yards, floating down. And the funny part is you might feel the wind's coming to your face, and you let it go and it goes the direction. You're like, oh, I'm all good. And then you watch it, and then it swirls and catches like a little wind tunnel or something and loops back around. And then it starts making more sense if you see a deer acting skittish and you're going, well, the wind's to my face and this deer's off to the side, then it kind of makes sense to you, of what's happening. And so that's something I would say is probably not traditional. I don't really see many people do it.
We can accept that one. Down feathers for checking the wind. That's a new one. Yeah, that's good. That's an interesting concept. I wonder how many other people are doing that. I haven't heard of it.
The only people I've seen do something similar is the hunting public. I've seen them use the cattail You know, I'm talking about the little, they're like
Yeah.
little, I don't even know what they are. It's like little feathers that's on the end of cattails. I've seen them use those, but yeah. So I would say that's probably my non-traditional.
All right.
I'm telling you,
What do you put 'em?
you guys should try. I keep a little Ziploc bag, and I have a vinyl harness with my rangefinder and all that, and I put it in a pouch so that way it's right there, and I can just fill it out and.
Do you remember the little coin purses that there's just a little slit and you put the coins in there? That'd be cool. Stuff them full of that and then fill one out.
Yep.
There.
Just like that. I just use it's like a little small Ziploc bag so it doesn't get any moisture or anything and make the feathers heavy, And but I mean they're so small and lightweight, but obviously a bright white, so you can see them for a long ways. Because like I say, the powders and stuff, and they've got the other ones. It starts with a C, like a Circa or something like that. It's like the smoke or whatever, but it does the same thing. It dissipates after, a few feet from you. And so the feathers I found work the best that tell the true story of what the wind's really doing, because there's been so many times that I sat there thinking my wind's all good and I'll watch it get about, 25 yards behind me and it'll swirl, like it'll hit like a little, I don't know, like a little drainage ditch or something. It'll hit that and it'll just wrap around. And I'm like, ooh, this ain't good. And there's been times I've had to get up and move because of that, not knowing, that the wind was doing that. But, where I hunt, it swirls a lot. So I really have to pay attention. To that. So,
yeah.
But that would probably be mine.
Gotcha. Well, we will put that one on the list. So well, Chad, we appreciate you spending some time with us today and talking about bow hunting and your legitimate 233 incher. So
I appreciate it, guys. It's been a blast. I'm always down to talk hunting.
Absolutely. Us too. We enjoy it. And it's so neat to talk to different folks from, guys that just love their whitetails, and then guys that are chasing sheep and elk and all the different things. And it's always a lot of fun. So we appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys.
All right. Well, hey, good luck this fall. And hopefully you can go out and pop another one for the record books, because that will be new record book is coming out in April. So nice. You've got till the end of the year to get another one in there.
All right. Well, all right. I'll work on it. If you guys are ever down in Texas, man, look me up. We'll try to go get a hunt together.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Chad.
All right.